Donetsk, Saturday night. A packed club, hands in the air, screaming the name of the DJ in the booth. 5 hours earlier, that same man had emptied the bank account of a convent of nuns in Chicago. And the craziest part? In 15 years, the FBI never even learned his name. Vyacheslav Pinchakov was a bullied kid from a dying mining town. By his 20s, he ran a cybercrime syndicate that stole $73 million from American hospitals, churches, and dental offices. But this isn't just a story about a hacker. It's about the 4-layer bank security his crew broke in under 60 seconds. The president's son, who became godfather to his daughter, and the one sentence he typed himself that brought the whole empire down. In 2010, the FBI broke down his door and found a half-finished cup of tea. He was already gone. This is how a small-town DJ stole a fortune, fooled the FBI for 15 years, and got caught by something almost all of us share without thinking. Donetsk, 1999, a gray February. The coal mines were running at half capacity. The miners hadn't been paid since November, and inside one apartment, a thin, quiet boy unboxed a Pentium 2. He had never touched a computer before. His name was Vyacheslav Pinchakov. His friends called him Slava. At school, the other kids pushed him around. He was the quiet one, the last one picked. Then the computer changed everything. By 13, he had taught himself HTML and built his own website. By 14, he had cracked the game FIFA 99, so his player ran faster than anyone else's. And the kids who used to push him, they started asking for the patch. For the first time in his life, people wanted something from him. But the world was still closed to him. His best friend got into a Kyiv university through family connections. Slava had no connections. He had a Pentium. So what does a poor, friendless teenager do when the only thing he owns is a computer? He finds where the money is. By 2002, he was on a forum called Carter Planet. There he learned a simple fact. A stolen American credit card number sold for between $5 and $20 on the black market. And 32,000 other people were already on that same forum. The math didn't require connections. It only required nerve. By 2003, Slava had built his first fake online store, an electronics shop that sold nothing. He used stolen cards to buy imaginary products from his own website. The money landed in his account. By the time the real cardholder noticed, the cash was already gone. Late one night, he ran his first transaction. It went through. That weekend, he threw a party, vodka, food, girls from school who had never noticed him before. He paid for all of it, $200. Then he walked home at 4 a.m, through streets as poor as they had ever been. Nothing on earth had changed. He was 17 years old, and he had found the hole in the world. Most cybercriminals get caught fast. Slava stayed quiet for 3 years. He sold stolen cards. He scaled his fake stores. By 2005, he was making around $2,000 a month. 2 years earlier, he could barely afford 2 bottles of beer. Now he bought his first car. He paid for everyone's drinks. And he learned the equation that would define his entire life. Skill makes money. Money buys friends. But the tool that would make him rich didn't exist yet. In 2007, a Russian programmer in the town of Anapa published a piece of code that would change cybercrime forever. His name was Yevgeny Bogachev. He called his program Zeus. Slava paid $1,000 for it. He didn't know yet that this software would, over the next decade, drain more than $100 million from American banks. And he didn't know that he was about to build a syndicate. Because Zeus did the technical work, but running it at scale took a crew. You needed someone watching the alerts that pinged every time a victim opened their bank's website, someone ready to log in the second they connected, someone moving the money out in the seconds before the bank's fraud system woke up, and someone laundering it all the way back to Russia. One person could not do this. There are 3 rules in cybercrime. Never use your real name, never brag about the money, never talk about your family. Slava started hiring. He taught his crew all 3. He kept 2 of them himself. Remember that. He kept 2. He built a small team across several countries, a systems admin in Ukraine, a cash-out coordinator in Moscow, a man 3 floors above the office to watch the alerts, two money launderers in London. By 2008, Slava was 22, and on the criminal forums, he was no longer Slava, he was Tank. But here's the part the FBI would struggle with for years. Tank was not a hacker. He never wrote a single line of code. Bogachev wrote the code from Russia. Tank simply hired the people who used it. The stolen money landed in American bank accounts. To get it out of America, Tank needed Americans. So he hired 3,500 of them. They never met him. They thought they had a remote office job. The ad said, financial coordinator, work from home, 5% commission. The job was simple. A wire transfer arrives from a US company. You withdraw the cash. You walk into a Western Union in your hometown. You send it to a name you were given. You keep 5%. You ask no questions. None of them knew they were laundering stolen money for a crew in Donetsk. And every transfer stayed under $10,000, because above $10,000, American banks file an automatic federal report. By the end of 2008, the operation was stealing roughly $50,000 a week. By 2009, $200,000. By 2010, the crew made more in a single month than the entire mining city of Donetsk paid its workers in 2 years. His own crew called him father. But everything they had built had not yet hit a real American bank. And when it did, the most expensive defensive system in global banking was going to collapse in less than 60 seconds. So how do you actually break into a modern bank account? In 2008, the wall protecting your money had 4 layers. Your password, that was what you knew. A 6-digit code from a small plastic fob on your keychain, that was what you had. Your home IP address, that was where you were. And your device fingerprint, that was who you were. To rob an account, you needed all 4 at the same second, from the customer's own computer, from the customer's own home. It was the most expensive defensive system in global banking. A $5 plastic fob, multiplied across millions of customers, protected trillions of dollars. How do you beat a wall like that? You don't climb it. You make it open from the inside. Early Zeus just stole passwords, but by the time the criminals read the stolen log, the 6-digit codes had already expired thousands of times. American fraud teams decided Zeus had stopped working. The banks treated it as a win. Tank treated it as an engineering problem. His crew took Zeus and rebuilt it. From the outside, it looked exactly like the old, broken Zeus. Inside, it carried something that could defeat all 4 layers at once. Picture a bookkeeper in Iowa. She opens her bank's webpage. The address is correct. The little padlock is green. Every visible sign tells her she is safe. But Tank's code is already running inside her browser. As the page loads, it quietly rewrites it. It adds 1 extra field. The bank never asked for her code. The screen tells her it did, so she types it in. In that same instant, the bank receives her login, her code, her IP address, and her device fingerprint. All 4 checks pass. Why? Because Tank is logging in through her computer at the exact moment she is. The bank thought it was watching the customer log in. It was watching Tank log in, on her machine, through her browser, with her own permission. Every defense the bank had built was now working against itself. 8,000 kilometers away, in Donetsk, Tank started moving the money. He had less than 60 seconds before the code expired. By 2009, his team ran this attack 9 times a month, 60 seconds each time, and they never missed. By day, Tank walked into a 4th-floor office above a wedding dress shop. His crew showed up Monday through Friday at 2 in the afternoon. That was the hour when American small businesses opened their books. The first transfer of the morning would land. The office would cheer. $500,000 from a small business in Iowa. The week was already paid for. Tank would lean back, pick up his phone, and call his wife to say he was taking her out tonight. This is what made him so hard to catch. The most sophisticated cyber operation in the world looked, from the outside, like a quiet, well-run IT firm. And then he spent the money. By night, he was DJ Slava Rich. The boy nobody picked at school now played house and trance in the biggest clubs in Donetsk. The lines stretched around the block. He flew to Kyiv on weekends to headline. People stopped him on the street. First the BMW, then the Porsche 911, then a customized Audi with a Lamborghini-derived engine. Windows down, rolling through downtown Donetsk so everyone could see him. His wife wore mink in winter. They holidayed in the Maldives. At his peak, he was spending $200,000 a month. He believed it was forever. He had 6 months. Nobody in Donetsk asked the obvious question. How does a DJ afford a Lamborghini engine? Nobody asked, because nobody wanted to know. But one man in Donetsk knew everything, and his father was about to become president. An operation like this works because someone builds it, but it stays alive because someone protects it. Tank needed political cover. He got it over lunch. To understand what happened next, you have to understand who owned Ukraine in 2009. A man named Viktor Yanukovych. 2 old prison sentences for robbery and assault. 2 terms as prime minister. His political machine was called, simply, the family. They owned the coal, the steel, and the banks. And by 2010, they would own the country. Donetsk's golden youth was about 1,000 people, and Tank drank in the same clubs as the president's son. They had been doing it for years. The president's son was also named Victor. The press called him Junior. In a private dining room in Donetsk, in the late spring of 2009, Tank had lunch with Junior. His wife was 6 months pregnant. "When the child is born," Tank said, "I want you as godfather." "Yes," Junior answered. That was the entire conversation. No paperwork. But the agreement carried the weight of a state. 1 month later, the operation broke into the news in a Kentucky county. The FBI had never had a reason to visit. June 22, 2009. Bullied County, Kentucky, 7:55 in the morning. The county treasurer logged in. Her job that day was payroll. She had done it twice a month for 14 years. She did not know that the screen in front of her was not the one her bank had sent. A new field appeared. She entered her code a second time. In Donetsk, a chat window pinged. Tank cracked his knuckles. He had 58 seconds. He logged into the county's payroll system. He added 25 new employees. Every name was a real American. One of his work-from-home money mules. Every transfer was exactly $9,800. The math was deliberate. By Friday, those Americans would walk into Western Union offices across the country, and the cash would fly to Donetsk, Moscow, and Riga. The county thought it had paid 25 new workers. In fact, it had handed $415,000 to Tank. In 58 seconds, he had stolen 8 years of the treasurer's salary. From a purely cold, operational view, it was elegant. The county's own payroll system had paid the people who just robbed it. A bank employee noticed the anomaly that afternoon. Bullied County called the FBI, and the FBI took the case quietly. They did not want American banks to know that banks could be drained this way, but the bank that lost the money sued the county, and that lawsuit was public. That is where one outsider enters the story. A reporter at the Washington Post had been covering cybercrime for years. He had been tracking Zeus for 2 of them, waiting for one victim willing to talk. The Bullied County lawsuit was that victim, talking. On July 2, 2009, he published, it was the first time Zeus had ever been named in a major American newspaper. American banks read it over breakfast. So did the FBI. So did Tank. That night, in their private chat, the crew panicked. "The Americans know," Tank wrote. "I know," Bogachev answered. "They're calling it a hospital theft. We change everything." Within 48 hours, Tank rewired the entire cash-out network. New banks, new cities, new names. The operation simply continued. But what Tank did not know was that the FBI had started tracing the wire logs backward. The trail ended at a server in Manhattan that the crew used as a chat relay. An agent got a warrant, and for the next full year, the FBI read every single word Tank's crew typed to one another. They learned the handles. They learned the cities. They did not learn the one thing that mattered. Not until Tank, in that very same chat, typed a sentence none of them noticed. Because on July 22, 2009, Tank's daughter was born. Her name was Miloslava, and Tank, proud and happy, typed her exact birth weight into a private chat with 4 close friends. Remember the 3 rules? Never use your real name, never brag about the money, never talk about your family. Tank kept 2 of them. At the christening that autumn, Junior stood beside the priest, and on February 25, 2010, Junior's father was sworn in as president of Ukraine. Inside the Security Service's Donetsk office, something quietly changed. Warrants from Kyiv stopped being processed. Investigations closed. Pinchakov's name disappeared from active files everywhere outside Donetsk. Other criminals were not so lucky. One famous carder was arrested in France that year. The hacker behind a massive American retail breach was sentenced in Boston to 20 years. None of these arrests touched Tank. None of them even knew his name. In a federal courthouse in Nebraska, a prosecutor filed a sealed indictment. The name on it? John Doe No. 1, alias Tank. It would sit sealed for years. Then, in April 2010, one of Tank's own crew posted a warning in the group chat. The FBI is watching. I have seen the logs. Someone inside the joint American-Ukrainian task force had tipped them off. To this day, no one has named who. But did Tank panic? Not for a second. The godfather of his daughter was now the president's son. He believed the shield would hold. He told the crew to change their handles. He kept the same server. He kept working. On a Tuesday night in late September, the door of his apartment was going to come off its hinges. By September 2010, the FBI had been preparing for 14 months. They had the handles, the surveillance photos, the office, the home address. They did not have his real name. They moved anyway. The operation was called Trident Breach, a coordinated raid across 3 countries, designed to destroy the entire network in 48 hours. On September 29, 2010, British police arrested the 2 launderers at a flat in North London. Their phones held encrypted chat sessions. The encryption was only partial. The metadata pointed east, to Donetsk. But the real threat to Tank was not 2,000 kilometers away in London. It was inside the same city. 2 days before the synchronized raid, the head of the Security Service's Special Forces in Donetsk made a phone call. He used the phone the FBI was not listening to. "The Americans are coming Tuesday night," he said. That associate called a third man. The third man called Tank's office, and before he even hung up, a man with a screwdriver was already in the room, silently removing every hard drive. By the time the FBI task force landed at Kyiv's main airport, Tank's office was 3 empty desks. Tank had been preparing for this for years. He kept $1 million in cash spread across safety deposit boxes in 3 Donetsk banks. He kept forged passports. He kept the Audi fueled. On the night of the raid, Tank was at a local amateur football match. His phone rang just before midnight. "Tank, there are police cars on your street." He walked off the pitch in his football kit. He got into the Audi. He picked up his wife, and he drove north at speeds the Donetsk patrol cars could not match. At a checkpoint on the edge of the city, an officer drinking coffee looked up. He saw a black Audi pass at 3 times the limit. By the time he radioed it in, the Audi was already 6 kilometers away. At 1:14 in the morning, the FBI and an elite Ukrainian team broke down the door of Tank's apartment. They walked through the rooms. They found a child's high chair. They found a half-finished cup of tea. They found no one home. A high chair, a teacup, 3 empty desks. The largest cybercrime task force in FBI history had just bounced off a Donetsk kitchen. The operation arrested 39 people. The mules in Britain went to prison. The leadership in Donetsk lost nothing. 6 weeks later, the Ukrainian prosecutor handling the case dropped it. The security service in Donetsk knew exactly who Tank was. They had his real name, his address, his birth certificate. They had simply decided not to use any of it. Across the ocean, the FBI sat with a sealed file. The face was there. The office was there. The chat logs were there. The name was not. Tank walked back into his 4th-floor office. The shift started at 2. What he did not know was that, in 3 years, the country protecting him was going to come apart in 8 weeks. For 3 years, he did almost nothing. He stayed in Donetsk. He stopped using the old chat system. He bought into a coal trading business. He tried, by his own account, to go legitimate. By 2013, it all felt permanent. In February 2014, it stopped feeling permanent. Protests in Kyiv forced the president to flee. He resigned and escaped to Russia by helicopter. That same week, Masked men with no insignia appeared on the streets of Donetsk. By summer, the city was inside a war zone. The protection layer Tank had spent 5 years building disappeared in 8 weeks. The country that had shielded him was now occupied territory. The Ukrainian state could not reach him. The Russian state would not. For the first time in 5 years, he was on his own. And 8,000 miles away, a man with no badge was about to do what every FBI analyst had missed. At the University of Alabama in Birmingham, a computer forensics professor named Gary Warner had been reading those old chat logs on weekends. No badge, no agency, no deadline. Federal analysts had already been through every line. None of them had found a real name. In 2014, Warner opened the same file he had opened 100 times before. He scrolled past the same conversations. Cars, wives, Mediterranean trips, American banks. Then he stopped on one line. July 22nd, 2009. Tank announcing the birth of his daughter. Her name, her exact birth weight. 5 years of FBI analysts had read straight past that line. Warner did not. He opened the Ukrainian Civil Registry. He typed one query. How many girls named Miloslava were born in Donetsk on July 22nd, 2009, weighing exactly 3 kilograms and 200 grams? The answer came back. 1. The father's name on that birth certificate was Vyacheslav Igorovich Pinchukov. After 5 years, the FBI finally had the name. But there was one problem. Tank now lived in occupied territory. There was no extradition. There was no way in. They had his name. They could not reach him. The shield had been the child, and now the wound was the child too. One layer of protection was left, the Godfather himself. But in March 2015, Junior died, his car breaking through the frozen surface of a lake. Russia called it an accident. Tank's last protection was gone. For a year, he waited for them to come. Nothing came. The state had moved on. He was still rich, he just couldn't spend it. No Cyprus, no cars from Germany, no Kiev nightclub without a fake passport. He sat in occupied Donetsk and watched his fortune freeze. So in 2018, Tank did what he did best. He pivoted. Zeus was dead. His new tool broke into corporate networks, stole administrator passwords, and sold that access to ransomware gangs. And in October 2020, one of his customers used that access to drop ransomware on the University of Vermont Medical Center. Surgeons canceled operations, cancer patients lost appointments, 5,000 computers went offline for 2 weeks. The damage came to $54 million. Pinchukov wasn't in Vermont, he was in Donetsk, behind his desk. The FBI had known his name for 6 years. They still couldn't touch him. So what finally reached a man no agency could reach? The same thing that exposed him in the first place: his family. By 2022, the war had emptied Donetsk. His wife and children had moved to a house near Lake Geneva, in Switzerland. In October, Tank decided to follow. He hadn't seen his daughter in 3 years. What he didn't know was that the moment he left Russian-protected territory, every facial recognition camera in Europe would know exactly who he was. He traveled on a forged passport, out of the occupied East, across the continent, into Switzerland. October 22nd, 2022, Geneva, at dusk. 15 years of habit kicked in. He circled the block. He checked every parked car. Nothing looked wrong. He never saw the spotters on the roof. At every border he had crossed, a camera had flagged him. The FBI had known he was moving for 36 hours. He walked up the path. The kitchen light was on. His wife was inside. His daughter, now 13, was inside. He raised his hand to knock. Behind him, 3 men stepped out of a van. Vyacheslav Pinchukov, one said. The Bureau sends its regards. He did not run. His daughter was 6 feet away, behind the door. She didn't even know her father had come. He never went inside. On July 11th, 2024, in Lincoln, Nebraska, he was sentenced. 9 years in prison, $73 million in restitution he will never pay. But here is the thing worth remembering. What finally caught Tank was not the FBI. It was a daughter. Twice, she exposed him. In 2009, the birth weight he typed in a chat. In 2022, the door he walked to. Both times, he was simply being a father. And most fathers do the exact same thing. The date, the weight, the name. We post them. They're how the world knows we become a parent. They are also, sometimes, how the world finds us. For one moment, on the day his daughter was born, Vyacheslav Pinchakov stopped being Tank and became a proud father. That single moment is what got him caught. And that brings us to the end of our story. If you liked it, don't forget to like and subscribe and activate the bell button so you can receive new videos.